What does the Torah tell us we're supposed to do with truth? This week in the Weekly Why, we have Parsha Vayeshev. Now I want to compare two different examples of truth and of how people react to it. So this is a packed Parsha. We have we have Jacob and his 12 sons. And again, these 11 of the sons grow very irritated and very jealous of their brother Joseph, who is clearly the most favored of his sons. He has a special jacket. He is clearly favored, and the other brothers, this is not lost on them. Now, Joseph has all these dreams. He has all these dreams where basically, one of the dreams, as depicted in the 37th chapter of the book of Genesis, says, that the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bow down to me. And that, here's the thing, we have Joseph, who's telling his brothers about these stories and telling his father about these dreams he has. And this is a very strange thing, because these brothers are already jealous of Joseph, because Joseph, again, is the most favored brother. So the question is, why on earth is Joseph, who is really having these dreams, why is he telling his brothers about these dreams? Because this is essentially like you being a really rich guy, and you have a big fancy car and a big fancy house, and you show up to work, and there's a guy at work who sits right beside you, and you know that he's really, really jealous of you. And you know that he's not just jealous, but he actually resents you personally because he's so jealous. So does it make sense, therefore, for you to come into work every day and be talking about, hey, Bob, did I tell you about the new Mercedes I got? And did I tell you about the new cottage I got? I mean, it seems utterly irrelevant. Not just irrelevant, but it almost seems like an attempt to just irritate the other guy. And that's not what Joseph was trying to do. Joseph, who was the favorite son and who all the other brothers were jealous of, he had a dream that the sun, the moon, basically, and everything else was bowing down to him. Now, Joseph was not telling his brothers and his father this in order to get brownie points or in order to impress them or to rub in their face. Joseph knew it was true. He knew that eventually this would be happening, that it later does happen, that Joseph becomes a high figure in Egypt and all of that comes true. But the point here is that Joseph saying that to his brothers would have no reason to know that's true. This was a dream that Joseph had. His brothers thought that he was hallucinating, or that he was, a figment of his imagination, or that he was lying. So his brothers didn't know that there was any truth to this whatsoever. So by Joseph saying this, there was no tangible benefit whatsoever in this. And I think that that's where the major difference had, is that he wasn't saying this to gloat or make other people feel bad about him or about themselves, but the point is that he wasn't sensitive to the fact that they would have no idea this was true. So in other words, in their eyes, it could very easily have been a lie. Now, fast forward a little bit, and we have Joseph, who has now been sold into slavery in Egypt, and he is in the household of the viceroy. In other words, the second in command in Egypt. His name is Potiphar. And Potiphar, his wife, constantly hits on Joseph. He keeps saying no. So eventually one day, she accuses him of basically molesting her, and Potiphar throws him in jail. And the question arises, well, why didn't Potiphar kill Joseph? I mean, he very easily could have executed him. Why didn't he? Commentators, many of them say, is that Potiphar knew that Joseph was innocent. He knew that he was innocent and that he had, in fact, been falsely accused by his wife. But, of course, he can't say anything. He can't say, no, my wife is really telling the truth. Why? Because what would happen is that if everyone knew that Potiphar's wife really was a slut, an experienced woman, that if people knew that they would know that Potiphar's own children were illegitimate. And so, what's the connection between these two stories? Is that with the case of Joseph, we have Joseph who's speaking truth. That I had this dream, and the dream is that you would be bowing down to me. Question is that his father, Jacob, rebuked him. He rebuked him in here, and he said, why are you saying this? He's saying this because there's no reason, there's no tangible benefit in Joseph saying this. Although it is 100% true that he had that dream, and though it is 100% true that was the reality was there was no tangible benefit in Joseph saying that. Thus, he should not have said it, because not only was there no benefit, it did tremendously hurt his brothers, and it made them essentially try to kill him. But the point is that this second story with Potiphar is that, lest we think, therefore, that, we should always be hiding truth, we should always be hiding reality if we know that we're right. In other words, the first story is to teach us, if you're arguing with a spouse or a friend, or you're having a Thanksgiving dinner with a 102-year-old Aunt Bertha, and you know that if you say a particular thing is going to give her, God forbid, a heart attack, yeah, it's probably not the best thing, even if it's true. But the point is that don't get carried away by that. That's not an all truth. In other words, that's not something we should follow all the time. Because with Potiphar, he knew, according to the commentaries, that Joseph was innocent, and yet he still let Joseph go to jail. And so here we have quite the opposite. And on one hand, we can't simply, we shouldn't simply spout out everything just because we know it's true, because that could be harmful. On the other hand, if something we know is true and it is going to cause harm by not doing it, we have an obligation to do that as well. So again, I think the take-home lesson for us is clear: is that it's not an all or nothing. Is that there is a nuance, as with everything else in Judaism. Is that we have to use our brains and we have to use our guidance with the people who we know, who we respect, and who we know we can trust. But the point is that sometimes, if speaking truth or speaking something which we know to be correct has negative influences, we don't necessarily have to say it. It doesn't mean lying, it just means that we don't have to volunteer something if it's going to cause harm. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that holding it back all the time. That sometimes you need to have that uncomfortable conversation, you need to speak out, and you need to say what you know is right. And I think that's the take-home lesson for us here, is that Judaism has that nuanced position where, sometimes we need to take a stand even when no one else is doing it. So that's it for this week's Weekly Why. Best wishes, Shabbat Shalom, God bless.